changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark with your Chicken Soup for the Soul. And in these unsettling times, that means that you need a big dose of laughter. And we have it for you in the form of our latest book. Because if laughter is the best medicine, then this is your prescription. I know that some people think that Chicken Soup for the Soul is all about self-help or heartwarming stories. But no, not actually. This is the 8th humor book that we've published since I became publisher in 2008. And it is filled with funny stories from about 100 different writers, many of them making fun of themselves and sharing their most embarrassing moments. We've got stories about domestic disasters, mistaken identity, wedding snafus, technology traumas, wardrobe malfunctions, words that just came out wrong, and all the other ways in which we find humor in our daily lives. And today, I want to talk about family pranks, the kind that families talk about around the dinner table for years, the ones that elicit laughter no matter how many times the stories have been told. So in our first prank story, A.J. Hughes tells us that she didn't always listen to her mom, even when she was an adult. So she missed out on some good advice. And we start all our stories with a relevant quote. And we started this story with a quote from Erma Bombeck, and it goes like this. When your mother asks, do you want a piece of advice? It is a mere formality. It doesn't matter if you answer yes or no, you're going to get it anyway. Well, AJ definitely should have listened to her mom, as she was always the organized one. With 4 kids, her mom had to be. So when the kids grew up, got married, etc., their mom still jumped in to impose order once in a while. AJ says that she and her husband and son lived out of state, but one November they went to visit the family for a few weeks, and so they rented a house and volunteered to host Thanksgiving dinner. AJ bought all kinds of fall decorations, so she was organized about that. But what drove her mom crazy was that AJ had 12 people coming, and everyone was bringing something, and AJ refused to assign dishes to people, like asking them to bring a salad or a vegetable side dish or a starch or an appetizer or dessert. Instead, AJ just told people to bring whatever they wanted, and that was way too relaxed and risky an approach for her mother. So the big day came. AJ's sister and her husband arrived first, carrying a broccoli casserole, which looked delicious. Then a niece arrived with steamed broccoli that had some kind of special seasoning. Then her mom walked in with a crudité plate, except that it was all broccoli, no other vegetables, and then there was some ranch dressing. Then 2 friends arrived, both with something broccoli. AJ thought, this is hilarious. How did this happen? Does everyone love broccoli that much? Well, it's okay. Broccoli is yummy. It'll be a healthy Thanksgiving, even though I have no appetizer, salad rolls, dessert, or other vegetable, but it'll be fine. Although there was no pie. When another niece arrived with a bag of raw broccoli, it was too much. And then AJ noticed some smirks and how everyone was looking at her. She says, the entire gang started laughing. Mom walked up and told me that this is why you assign food groups. The risk is too great that you may get nothing but broccoli or worse. My mouth flew open in shock and confusion until I too laughed until I had tears running down my cheeks. Mom had orchestrated the whole thing along with her accomplices, my family and friends. Life is full of lessons. This is one I'll never forget. Sometimes all it takes is too much broccoli. Lynn Latella shares her own prank with us in our new humor book. Her husband traveled all over the world for his job. And shortly after they got married, he had a particularly busy schedule, spending weeks away from home in Switzerland, Germany, and England. Lynn decided to play a trick on him when he returned. She went to a costume shop and searched for something crazy to wear when she picked him up. The clerk suggested a hooker costume, and Lynn shocked her by saying that her husband would definitely recognize her in that costume. But she had another idea, a completely different direction. She was putting on her costume at home when she learned that his flight was arriving early, which does seem to happen often with international flights. So she quickly finished putting on the costume, but was still wearing her rather alluring black patent peep-toe high heels. That was okay, though, because her nun's habit would cover the shoes. Yes, Lynn was dressed as a nun in an old-fashioned habit. She says, "When I arrived at the airport, people went out of their way to be polite. Some opened doors, bowed to me, and conveyed blessings. One even genuflected and asked me to pray for her. A heat wave of embarrassment activated my sweat glands. It's one thing to impersonate a police officer, which could lead to an arrest, but impersonating a nun could be considered downright sacrilegious. As I clutched the long string of black rosary beads suspended from my waist, my mouth was dry as a desert, and my stomach was doing acrobatics. But I had to play this prank out to the end." She walked toward where she would meet her husband, trying to avoid looking at anyone. And then she saw her husband and his colleagues emerging from customs. It seemed like her husband didn't recognize her. But he did. She says, "Suddenly, I heard his booming voice from several feet behind saying, 'Hey, you, get over here.' I froze. So did the other passengers. I saw one woman making the sign of the cross. He quickly grabbed me, dramatically dipped me backward with my head almost touching the floor, and planted a noisy kiss on my lips." And now her sexy shoes were in full view of everyone. Lynn says, "When I returned to a standing position, I faced a sea of slack-jawed spectators. His colleagues stared at him in stunned disbelief. Lynn turned bright red and headed to the exit. But the impressive thing was that her husband had recognized her, processed the costume as a joke, and turned the tables on her by passionately kissing a nun in the middle of the airport and totally embarrassing his wife. I'm Amy Newmark. Thanks for listening today. If you have your own stories to tell, go ahead and visit chickensoup.com and check out the Submit Your Stories section of our website. We're collecting stories for several new books that will come out in 2025 and 2026. And there are 101 stories in each book, and that means there are hundreds of opportunities for you to become a published author with us. We're already collecting stories for next year's humor book, as well as books about pets, Christmas, and miracles, among other topics. Also, if you want to receive a free Chicken Soup for the Soul story every day in your email, you can sign up for our newsletter. Just go to our website, click on newsletters, and you can pick the ones you want. We have a daily one, or just a weekly if you only want one story per week. And we also have weekly newsletters about specific topics such as pets, raising children, going through cancer, and our new one, faith and spirituality. And in our next episode, prepare to be amused when I share 2 stories about husbands. One about a colorblind husband who proudly paints his porch bright pink, thinking it's gray, and another about the disgusting meal that a husband receives when he thinks he's impressing his wife by speaking Italian at a fancy restaurant.